My name is Seth Cohen. I'm running to represent the 9th Congressional District of Illinois. Stay tuned. Taped with Rabbi Doug is next.
We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug on your TV tonight.
But Daddy, I want to watch Monday Night Football.
Forget about Monday Night Football. There's no other thing we're going to watch on Monday but Rabbi Doug.
Yeah, Rabbi Doug on TV tonight. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. Oh, everybody talk about Doug.
Shalom and welcome to Taped with Rabbi Doug. Glad you could be with us today. My guest today is Seth Cohen. Seth is running for Congress against Jan Schakowsky, the Democratic Congresswoman in the state of Illinois. And welcome to the show, Brooke.
Thank you so much.
Glad to have you with us. Seth is born January 20th, 1997 in Evanston. He grew up in Buffalo Grove. He went to Stevenson High School, and many people know Stevenson High School. He went to the College of Lake County. He ended up in the United States Marine Corps. He enlisted, and he also has his bachelor's from the University of Chicago, and was living in Hyde Park for a number of years. And he's married to Kaylee Baker, and I know her family very, very well. They are involved in a number of synagogues in the community. They are modern Orthodox, and he's an MBA candidate now at University of Chicago Booth School for Business. And this is like awesome to have you on the show. I actually had, as I mentioned to you off the air, Jan Schakowsky on my show before she was a congresswoman. Yeah. So you never know where being on my show can lead to, right? But thanks for being with us. So Seth, I want to start out asking you, what's your interest in politics? What brought you to say, politics is really something that I can make a difference and I can excel in and make a difference for the people of Illinois?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. I guess my interest in politics started at a very young age, seeing how normal American citizens can be representatives, make decisions for the whole nation and drive them either to a positive or a negative path really interested me, and seeing the clash in the arena, you could say, whether it be Congress or in the media. I was just really intrigued and interested. And someone who wants to make an impact on the future, it was just a career path that I knew was right for me. In terms of the interest now, I always thought I'd get into politics as an older man, 40s, 50s, early 60s. But ever since having a child this year and seeing the future that she might have to grow up in, I knew that I needed to act now, I needed to get involved now, and that I couldn't put it off for a couple of decades.
So interesting. So let's say one of our viewers out there are saying, I want to run for alderman, or I want to run for Congress, or I want to run for the Senate one day. What's the first step you have to do? What do you fill out? Where do you come to? Who do you talk to? Who are the guides that lead you? And how do you get these petitions together and get the signatures needed? What is the process that you had to go through just to get to this point?
Yeah, just another great question. I really appreciate it, you asking me that, because I also didn't know that answer a couple months ago, like 4 or 5 months ago when I started this process. And government has been so centralized, the media's focus has been so centralized into the presidency and the U.S. Senate, and to a lesser degree Congress or the House of Representatives. It's really hard for people to really wrap their head around local government and the local party structure. And so Illinois has a state party, we have committeemen, we have precinct captains. That local structure exists, and you have but to raise your hand and say, I want to get involved. And so to answer your question, if you want to run for office one day or just be on the scene, what you should do is you should find out what township you live in. So if you live in Skokie, Lincolnwood, you live in Niles Township. If you live in Evanston, you live in Evanston Township, and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And go online, find your committeeman, and just send them an email. And if they don't email you back, go on the schedule and figure out when their next meeting is. And just involving yourself in that way. Committeemen are always looking for people that are willing to volunteer on campaigns, donate money. They're looking for good candidates. And if you're a good candidate, they're going to talk to you about it, and they're going to give you the opportunity. To further answer your question, the party will take care of everything else. So you might have to get a lot of your own signatures, but there will be help. You will talk with the party lawyer when it comes to finally formalizing it, and they'll drive it down to Springfield for you. But as much as we all hate political parties, and I can get into it, my thoughts on our two-party system compared with the parliamentary system in Canada, Israel, and Great Britain, where there's multi-parties, it's good in the sense that they really do give you a structure to put your campaign and put your candidacy forward.
Very, very interesting. How were you involved in community support before you decided to do this? What did you get yourself involved in?
So I founded a 501c3 nonprofit called the Brigade, and we have two chapters, the Chicago Brigade and the New York Brigade. And just focusing on the Chicago Brigade, because we live in Chicago, we provide professional development and networking opportunities for student veterans in the Chicagoland area. So we communicate with community colleges, with UIC, U Chicago, Northwestern, DePaul, Loyola, et cetera, et cetera. And we basically want to ensure that student veterans, when they leave the military and get accepted into college, could achieve professional attainment. And so with the professional development piece, we have something called the 5-week experience. And over 5 Saturdays, I don't attend, I'm an Orthodox Jew, but over 5 Saturdays, using Fortune 500 company representatives, they basically professionally develop through personal and professional branding, networking, etiquette, interview skills, resume building, etc. And then in terms of the networking, we do networking socials where we get 25 to 30 Fortune 500 companies, and then local companies. You come, we have alcohol, we have food. Again, I don't partake in either.
No. The idea is to attract people and get them to come and
exactly.
be part of it.
Exactly.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. So let me ask you this: the last person in our community, in this Jewish community, which you identify yourself as, and I'm in also, was Joel Pollack, who ran against Jan Schakowsky, and he had a lot of money in his campaign and did not win the election. He was a lawyer already before that. What is different about your campaign and Joel's campaign when it happened?
Yeah, so actually the last Jew, an Orthodox Jew to run was Max Rice. He ran
Max
last
Rice,
cycle,
right?
which is
Max
totally
Rice,
understandable.
But not as big as Joel, though. He wasn't as well known.
So no one in this district is well known as Joel. Every person I go to, they're like, have you talked to Joel? Have you met with Joel? What about, I volunteered on Joel Pollack's campaign. So Joel is sort of a ghost on my campaign, and I don't say ghost in a negative sense, but he's a shadow. He's always there.
Right.
I will say that Joel had a very different district. Gerrymandering is a huge part all over the country. Gerrymandering, in my opinion, is the worst bug of the U.S. Constitution. A pristine document besides thinking. I mean, the founders went so far to ensure that the corruption of the human identity didn't destroy the minority party or etc. But they thought that the state legislators would be able to keep politics out of drawing the map. So without going too much into that, Illinois is one of the worst gerrymandered, if not the worst gerrymandered state in the nation. And so Joel didn't really have a chance. Evanston votes maybe, I haven't looked at it recently, but maybe 90% Democrat. And the Evanston was the foundation of his district. So Joel couldn't, no amount of money Joel could have raised, no a number of individuals he could shake hands with or knock on their door would have won him that race. And it's reflected. Max Rice and other candidates after him or before him had very low funds, and they did as well or worse than Joel. Then better than Joel. And that's not Joel's fault. That's just how his district was a decade and a half ago. Dan, to further answer your question in terms of my campaign, very different district, very different time, very different candidate. Jan was always a progressive candidate. She has gone more far left in terms of Israel. She's really lost the Jewish community. We've also included McHenry County and parts of Lake County into this district. And so though it's still gerrymandered in her favor, different in political environment, different candidate now, even though it's the same person, and I'm a different person.
Well, Joel's one of the few candidates that have been on our show that did not win, but hopefully that's not the case.
Yeah.
So I've had Jan on the show a number of times in Washington and here in Chicago. I've taped with her before. Jan has a big following. How do you, and I want to go into some more specific questions after this, but how do you reach out to her following and let them know about you and what you represent?
Yeah, so it's very difficult. Our nation has become so polarized to the fact where if you're talking or communicating with someone of various political persuasion, you really don't want to talk to them. And I don't feel that way. A lot of the people I associate with don't feel that way. But in my campaigning experience, I've went to go talk to Democrats, and they have a good opportunity to engage with the other candidate, whether they agree with them or not. And just the level of rudeness or the without any desire to communicate with me at all, even just to engage on issues that they really believe, has been very strong and very stark. And so I remember I marched in the Skokie and Evanston 4th of July parades, and I use Evanston as my poster child for the Democrat Party because for the last 26 years, it's been the foundation of the 9th District and has really kept Jan in power this whole time. When I was at the Skokie parade, even Democrats that didn't like me shook my hand. They took my walk card. They looked me in the eyes and looked me in the face. When I was in Evanston, a lot of people would avert their eyes. They would throw my walk card back at me. They went to go shake my hand and then realized who I was running against. They would stop trying to associate with me. And I'm not saying that's all. There's a lot of people that really were very kind. But that's the political reality we live with. And I'm sure if you go to Texas or you go to Florida or any other Republican-dominated states, you might get the same. Now, I think that Republicans just en masse are a lot kinder to the opposite political persuasion. But I think on average, it's the same. And so again, how do I reach out to these people? I think to show them that I'm a mensch and using that Jewish word for just a good person. And I really try to be a good person. Now, you know, everyone's valuable. Everyone has issues. You know, I just try to be the best, kindest person. Just kill them with kindness.
Now, you're
Be a
being
good
watched
guy.
by hundreds of thousands of people around the Chicago area and around the world online. But tell me, how are your policies different and better
Yeah.
for Illinois, for the United States, with Seth Cohen being the congressman rather than Jan Schakowsky's current policies? What's different, and what do you think is better that people should know about?
Yeah, so I think very high level, I am very much an idealist, meaning I believe in ideas and principles, and party is underneath that. Jan Schakowsky very much believes in political ideology and the party above all else. And I think that is really shown in how she's presented herself over the last couple of years, and then how I presented myself during this campaign, and I have for my whole entire life. Just a couple of examples. I very much believe in the Constitution. And so on the forms of abortion, I might have opinions on abortion, but as a constitutionalist, someone who's principled in our federalist system of government, I don't think the federal government has any right to regulate abortion. I think this is a 10th Amendment issue, and the Supreme Court has said as much. It says you can't find it in the Constitution, and so the states and your local representatives get to decide on that issue. If you would ask Jan the same question, she would vote in a heartbeat for returning Roe v. Wade or even having more loose abortion policies of the federal government. And so for me, my principles and the ideals of American representative democracy is my driving force in everything that I do. And I'm able to separate my own passions, my own political passions, with what's right and what's wrong at a very objective constitutional lens. Another example in terms of our differences, Jan has a very progressive ideology, both economically and socially. And for me, though I'm a conservative, I have a very middle-of-the-road conservative approach. And so I know plenty of Republicans that want to insert Judeo-Christian values in the places maybe it doesn't belong. And as a modern Orthodox Jew, I very much believe in Jewish values. And I think what's great about Western society is it is the enjoyment. It is the combination of Jerusalem, Judeo-Christian values, and the West, individualism. And you only get individualism in Greece and Rome. And you only get individualism from that togetherness. Okay. And so she wants, again, just really quickly, she wants universal health care, which is unaffordable. The nation can't do that. She'll want price controls. Jan wants public schools to have complete dominance over your children. And I just believe in the reverse. I believe in the individual. I believe in representative democracy. I believe in our federal system of government. And if you vote for me, that's what you're getting, a guy with principles.
I like that. So I've never discussed this with Jan on my show before. So I apologize that I can't give you her point of view, but the record shows that Jan, who has a great record voting for Israel, for the safety and supplying our only democratic partner and friend in the Middle East with the things needed to make sure that they're safe. She has a great voting record. However, in recent times, a lot of things she has voted against because they included the West Bank or opinions about the after October 7th, Israel's responses and the war in Gaza and the war in the north, which is brewing right now with Hezbollah, so Hamas and Hezbollah, and the Palestinian protests that are going on campuses and around the world. She is not on the right with the majority of Israel supporters and Jewish people on many of those things, though she's been a friend to Israel unquestionably overall over the years. How do you feel about those things, and how do you feel that you would be different? Because I think a lot of our viewers are asking that question.
Of course, and they should be asking that question. I want to go back to my previous question. What I first said is that Jan doesn't have principles, she has political ideology, and she has the party. And so the last thing you said was that historically, Jan has been on the right side of this. Just recently, she hasn't. And I'd say, yes, historically, she's been on the right side because she does what she's told. And the Democrat Party, historically, has been a friend of Israel. And so do I think it was Jan herself using her own principles to dictate those voting patterns? No, I think she did what former Speaker Pelosi told her to do. And since she's in the 9th district, it was good for her base and to bolster support. She's been friendly with Aguda for the last decade and a half, maybe even longer. But recently, she's let them down, and she's let the whole Jewish community down in her district. To get to the brunt of your question about Israel, Jan has been horrible on Israel. She has never met with Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel.
And I also, one of the things that bothered me, which I haven't been able to ask her about in person, though I've heard her on TV and radio talk about this, is that when Netanyahu spoke in the United States to Congress recently, she did not go.
She didn't go. She did not go. And she's called Israel an occupying power. Yes, there's evidence that she's voted in rhetoric that she's a supporter of Israel. But if recent times has shown us anything, is that a lot of people have feigned support, and they did it for political ideology. So I'll talk enough about Jan and her crazy stance on Israel. I want to talk about my stance on Israel.
And that's what I want. I want to hear what you have to say about this, of course.
So I believe that a one-state solution is best for everyone involved. The Palestinians
currently the way things are.
No, just in general.
In general,
the way that the Palestinians have run the West Bank and Gaza has been absolutely horrendous. They have given all the money in the world. They have all of the international support in the world, and they don't have a functioning society. And I think that's wrong. I think that's wrong for the mothers and the fathers and the children that live in the apartment buildings, that just want to produce for their families and have a normal childhood and grow up in education. And they're just not getting it with the power structures that exist in their community. And this just falsehood that if Israel is wiped off the face of the planet, that they're going to just be prosperous overnight or even over decades is just ridiculous. And so from a non-political, just an economic and quality of life standpoint, Israel controlling Gaza and the West Bank is better for everyone involved. And I think that's indisputable. Even people that think that Israel is committing a genocide, even people that think they're ethnic cleansing, which those people are, in my opinion, insane.
Uneducated.
Sure, of course. It's just better for everyone if Israel wins this war. But going into the Israel policy, past the one-state solution, I support the IDF going in and killing all the terrorists. I support them going in and destroying Hezbollah. And I think if we had a president and a federal government and an executive branch that said to Israel, you have 2 months to finish this war, we'll give you anything you need, kill all of these people that are terrorists and part of Hamas, but get it done right now. Like, don't stop at Rafah, just do it. There wouldn't be this war in the north. There wouldn't be this problem. And so that's the problem. That's why we have this combat in Israel, is because the president of the United States has the power to pick up the phone and say, give us back the hostages and end this, or the 75th Ranger Regiment is going to go in and you're not going to survive another night. And if they call his bluff, when they get on the planes, they're going to do what he wants because they don't want to compete with the 75th Ranger Regiment. They won't do it. And they won't do it. And Jan herself,
I agree.
Jan herself called Israel an occupying power. She doesn't support the Israeli government. And she doesn't support her Jewish constituents that see Israel as not only a place of faith for Christians and Jews everywhere that have family members there, and Muslims that have family members there. They are a strategic ally against Iran and terrorism all over the world. And so I think it's a shame that the Democrat Party has left this bipartisanship that we've enjoyed as the Jewish people, as Jewish Americans, as Israel being our greatest ally for the last multitude of decades.
No, I agree with all this 100% in those terms. We are looking at, a situation where Israel has been so restrained by their allies saying, don't do this and don't do that because it puts civilians in danger and this and that. And in the meantime, the terrorists have moved forward during those different situations, and we've lost soldiers because of it, and Palestinian children and mothers and fathers who were restrained from leaving an area after Israel said, leave the area for your own safety, have lost their lives. But I don't think people take those into account. So I agree with you 100% on this. What do you think is going to be the outcome of things the way they are now as far as governments, U.S. governments, participation and opinion, and as far as Israel's next move, because we're ready for a next move?
Yeah, so I think whoever wins the presidential election will have a big impact on what happens, but taking that out of the equation, not focusing on whether it's Vice President Harris or former President Trump, I think based on the situation now, we sent an aircraft carrier ahead of schedule to the region. We have 40,000 troops in the Middle East. I don't foresee Iran getting involved. I think eventually there will be another ceasefire. The Israelis will return home. Hezbollah does not want to attack Israel. It would be their downfall. And I think that the leaders of these groups really aren't principled people. They don't care about the actual fight. They care about having as much money and as much power as they can. And I think Hamas is the greatest example of that. Their leaders, I think, live in Qatar, correct? In multi-million-dollar mansions. They're some of the wealthiest people on earth, while their people are starving and dying on the ground from their own army, their own Hamas terrorist army. So I think it'll go back to the status quo. I'm hoping that Israel decides to take over Gaza and control it. I feel like they're not going to do that. I think they're going to give it back to Hamas. I think that's a mistake. And I don't think we're going to get very far. Possibly if President Trump comes in, we might see some real leadership. And maybe Vice President Harris will surprise us. I don't want to take it away from her, this possibility, though I do think Harris leans in a very negative way when it comes to Israel and the Jewish people. And her
husband's Jewish,
which
Jan
means,
Schakowsky is Jewish.
Yeah, it means nothing to me. But I want to go back to the prior question because I think this is an important part.
Sure.
A generation in the first half of the 20th century experienced World War I and World War II. In the latter half of the 20th century, they experienced Korea, Vietnam, and the First and Second Gulf War. We've experienced Iraq and Afghanistan. However, the casualties that happened, while horrific, were not nearly at the scale of World War II, World War I, or Vietnam or Korea. And so the American people have this very theoretical conception of what war looks like. During World War II, we bombed Dresden to smithereens. We invaded Germany and rampaged through their nation to make sure Hitler never had a chance to take over Europe again. That was a moral decision. It was the moral thing to go to war. Wars should be about morality. What's the principled decision? And sometimes going in and using your army to take land and kill bad guys is the right decision. And sometimes there's casualties that happen. And it's unfortunate and it should be minimized to the highest extent. But if you make a moral decision and do something, there are consequences. But it doesn't mean that what you're doing is unjust. In Israel, it's the same thing, okay? You're going to war with bad people. They came in They slaughtered babies. They slaughtered people. They did barbaric acts on the Israeli people. And it is a moral decision to go to war with them. And so bad things happen in war. War is always evil. It's always unjust. However, sometimes it's the best moral decision to make. And maybe that sounds like you can't marry those two opinions. You can't marry those two principles or ideas together. I think you can, and I'd love to discuss it more. But Israel has an imperative to do this, and it's the moral decision to make.
Very good. Very good. I love that statement. So let me go back. We have just a minute left. I wanted you to give a final statement about Illinois. You're going to be a congressman if you win this election in the state of Illinois. What can you do for Illinois that Jan Schakowsky hasn't done for the state of Illinois as a national congressperson?
Okay, well, great question. I'll try to be really quick because we only have a minute left. Whenever I talk to constituents and I say, like, do you like Jan Schakowsky? They always say to me, she's done X, Y, and Z for me. And there are always things that any congressman in any district could do for you. And so right off the bat, I'll say, if you like Congressman Schakowsky because she expedited your passport or she helped you with immigration, I promise you, every congressman's doing that for their constituents, and I could do that for you too. So please don't use that as a reason why you want to vote for her. I'll do the same thing for you. Congressman Schakowsky's policies has led to a worse America for you, your children, and your future. And that includes her $10 trillion of votes for spending, $10 trillion that she's voted for in terms of spending, in terms of believing that Chicago should be a sanctuary state and city, and that she thinks that Chicago loves being a sanctuary city, which I think we can all see clearly they don't, and so on and so forth. And so what can I bring to the people of Illinois? How can I make your lives better? Well, I could give you a principled constitutional federalist approach where you'll actually feel like the person representing you truly cares about you. Number two, in terms of inflation, I will fight tooth and nail to ensure that inflation stays at 2% and that we get our debt under control. Number two, immigration. You don't deserve to have $1 billion deficit because the government is spending $250 million. The city of Chicago spent $250 million last year on economic migrants, and that money should go to you and not non-citizens. And so just based off those few things, there's a lot more. That's what I'll do for you as your next congressman.
Great. Thank you so much for being on the show. Seth Cohen. Seth Cohen is running for Congress against Jan Schakowsky for the state of Illinois. I want to thank you so much for being on the show and sharing all these things with us. I want to thank all of you for being with us. Remember, go out and vote in November. That's the important thing. Thanks for being with us. Remember, you can check out our website, www.tvrabbi.com, where you can also see former shows on the web, as well as former politicians. If you want to email Seth or us, info@tvrabbi.com is the email address. I'll forward it to Seth. I know he'll get back to you personally. And remember, on every week at this time, hope to see you next time right here on Taped with Rabbi Doug. Shalom, everyone.
And I'm talking about Rabbi Doug. Talking about Rabbi Doug. Talking about Rabbi Doug on your TV show. Well, he's the rabbi for me. Anytime you need. You're gonna get married or you're gonna die. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Well, he's the rabbi for me. Anytime you need. You're gonna get married or you're gonna die. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug on the TV tonight.
This has been a Taped with Rabbi Doug production.